Hello, Toon Army! What a brilliant day to be talking about our magnificent Newcastle United, the best team in the world. Hope you're all having a fantastic day and ready to dive into some exciting transfer news that's got everyone talking around St. James Park. Now then, before we get stuck in, I've got a couple of burning questions for you all. What do you think about Newcastle being willing to negotiate around that $60 million figure for João Pedro? And how confident are you that we can convince the Brazilian to choose the Tyne over London? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm dying to hear what the Toon Army thinks about this potential blockbuster signing. Right then, let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? João Pedro and Newcastle United. A saga that's been rumbling on for what feels like ages now. And honestly, it's got me more excited than a Geordie with a fresh pint on match day. The latest developments have given us fresh hope, and I'm here for every single bit of it. Luke Edwards has thrown us a proper lifeline here, hasn't he? When that Brighton defender Igor Julio came out claiming that Pedro fancies a move to London, I'll be honest with you, my heart sank a little bit. We've all been there before, haven't we? Getting our hopes up about a player, only to see them choose the bright lights of the capital over our beloved Newcastle. But Edwards, bless him, has reminded us that football transfers are never that straightforward. And thank goodness for that. The key thing here is what Edwards is saying. Just because Pedro might fancy London doesn't mean he's completely closed the door on us. It all comes down to who actually puts their money where their mouth is and makes a proper bid. And you know what? That's exactly where Newcastle United can shine. We've got the ambition, we've got the project, and most importantly, we've got the financial backing to make this happen. Let's be real about this for a minute. Pedro has been on our radar for years now. Remember back in 2022 when we were chasing him before we eventually landed Alexander Isak? That shows you just how highly our recruitment team rates this lad. And fair play to them, because Pedro has only gotten better since then. The fact that we're still pursuing him after all this time tells you everything you need to know about his quality and how much Eddie Howe wants him at St. James Park. What gets me really excited is that Brighton are apparently ready to let him go for around $60 million. Now, I know that sounds like a massive chunk of change, but in today's market, for a player of Pedro's caliber, that's actually decent business. We've seen what he can do in the Premier League. The lad's got pace, he's got an eye for goal, and he knows how to link up play. Exactly the kind of player who could take our attack to the next level. The fact that Newcastle are willing to negotiate around that figure shows serious intent from the club. This isn't just idle interest. This is the kind of move that shows we mean business in the transfer market. And honestly, that's exactly what I want to see from our club. We can't be messing about with lowball offers when there's quality available. Pedro is proven Premier League talent, and proven Premier League talent costs money. Now, about this London preference business. Look, I get it. London's got its attractions, hasn't it? But let me tell you something about Newcastle United right now that might just change Pedro's mind. We're not the same club we were a few years ago. We've got Champions League football to offer. We've got a manager in Eddie Howe who's working absolute miracles. And we've got a fan base that will worship the ground he walks on. If he comes here and performs, think about what happened with Bruno Guimaraes, with Alexander Isak, with Sandro Tonali. These are world-class players who could have gone anywhere, but they chose Newcastle United. Why? Because they could see the vision, they could feel the excitement, and they knew they'd be part of something special. That's exactly what we need. To sell to Pedro. The mention of Liverpool in Igor Julio's comments is interesting, isn't it? He's saying Pedro would fit perfectly at Liverpool. And you know what? He's probably right. But here's the thing. Would Pedro get the same opportunities at Liverpool that he'd get at Newcastle? Would he be the main man, the star signing that everyone's talking about? I doubt it. At Newcastle, he'd be coming in as a marquee signing, a player we're building our attack around. That's got to be appealing to any ambitious footballer. What really gives me confidence is that Edwards is suggesting it all depends on who actually comes in with a serious offer. Well, if that's the case, then we're in with a proper shout, aren't we? Newcastle United, under the current ownership, don't mess about when they want someone. If Eddie Howe has identified Pedro as his man, then you can bet your bottom dollar that the club will do everything possible to make it happen. The timing couldn't be better either. With the transfer window opening next week, we're right at the business end of things. No more speculation, no more rumours. It's time for clubs to put their cards on the table. And if Brighton are genuinely willing to let Pedro go for 60 million, then Newcastle need to be first in line with that offer. This is exactly the kind of signing that could define our summer transfer window. Pedro brings everything we need: Premier League experience, proven goal-scoring ability, and the kind of flair that gets fans off their seats. Imagine him running at defenders at St James's Park with 50,000 Geordies roaring him on. That's the stuff dreams are made of, that is. Right then, let's dive straight back into this Pedro saga, because there's so much more to unpack here. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more convinced I am that this could be the signing that changes everything for Newcastle United. You know what really gets me going about this whole situation? It's the fact that we're not just throwing money around, hoping something sticks. This is calculated, strategic recruitment at its finest. Eddie Howe and the team have clearly identified Pedro as the missing piece in our attacking puzzle. And when you look at our current setup, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Let's talk about what Pedro would actually bring to our team, because this isn't just about signing a big name. This is about adding genuine quality that complements what we've already got. Think about our front line right now. We've got Alexander Isak, who's absolutely electric. But imagine having Pedro alongside him, or even competing with him for that starting spot. The competition alone would drive both players to new heights, and that's exactly what championship-winning teams need. The Brazilian connection is something we can't ignore either. We've seen how South American players have thrived at Newcastle recently. Look at Bruno Guimaraes. The lad's become an absolute legend at St James's Park, hasn't he? There's something about the passion and commitment that these players bring that just clicks with our fan base. Pedro's got that same fire, that same desire to prove himself. And honestly, I think he'd love the intensity of playing for Newcastle United. What's really encouraging is that Brighton are apparently ready to do business at 60 million. Now, some might say that's a lot of money, but let me put it in perspective for you. In today's market, you're looking at $40 to $50 million for unproven talent from the Championship or lower European leagues. Here we're talking about a player who's already shown he can handle the Premier League, who's got pace to burn, and who's proven he can score goals at this level. That's not just good business. That's brilliant business. The timing of this potential move couldn't be better either. With the transfer window opening next week, we're getting in early while other clubs are still making their minds up. That's exactly the kind of decisive action that wins you transfer battles. While Chelsea are supposedly interested, they've got so many attacking players already that Pedro might just get lost in the shuffle. At Newcastle, he'd be a key man from day one. Igor Julio's comments about Pedro wanting to live in London. Look, I understand the appeal, but let me tell you something about Newcastle that might change his perspective. This city lives and breathes football in a way that London clubs can only dream of. When you walk through Newcastle city centre, wearing the black and white stripes. You're not just wearing a shirt, you're representing something bigger than yourself. That's the kind of environment that brings out the best in players. And let's be honest about the London thing. How many brilliant players have we seen get swallowed up by the big London clubs? They go there expecting to be the main man and end up fighting for scraps. At Newcastle, Pedro would be coming into a team that's built around attacking football, where every player matters, where the fans will sing your name if you give everything for the shirt. That's got to be more appealing than being another face in a crowded squad. The fact that Luke Edwards is suggesting it all depends on who comes in with an offer tells me that this is far from over. Newcastle have shown time and again under this ownership that when they want someone, they go and get them. Think about how we landed Isak when everyone thought he was going elsewhere, or how we convinced Bruno to choose us over other options. That's the kind of pulling power we've got now. What excites me most is thinking about how Pedro would fit into Eddie Howe's system. The lad's versatility is exactly what Howe loves. He can play across the front line, he's got the pace to get in behind defences, and he's got the technical ability to create chances for his teammates. In Howe's high-energy, attacking style, Pedro would be like a fish in water. The Brazilian's goal-scoring record speaks for itself, doesn't it? But it's not just about the goals. It's about the way he plays the game. He's got that South American flair, that unpredictability that can unlock tight defenses. Imagine him running at tired defenders in the 70th minute at St. James's Park, with the crowd going mental. That's the stuff that wins you matches. That's the difference between a good season and a great one. Pedro's age is perfect too. At 22, he's got his best years ahead of him. But he's already got enough Premier League experience to hit the ground running. That's exactly the profile of player we should be targeting. Not too young that he needs years to develop. Not too old that we're paying for past achievements. He's right in that sweet spot where he can make an immediate impact while still having room to grow. The competition aspect is huge as well. Huge. As right now, if Isak gets injured, we're looking at significant changes to how we play. With Pedro in the squad, we'd have genuine options, genuine competition for places. That raises everyone's game, keeps everyone sharp, and gives Eddie Howe the flexibility to change tactics based on who we're playing against. I keep coming back to what Edwards said about it, depending on who comes in for him. Well, if that's the case, then Newcastle need to be first through the door with a proper offer. None of this messing about with complicated payment structures, or trying to get him on the cheap. Brighton wants 60 million. Let's give them 60 million and get this done. The more I think about it, the more this signing makes sense on every level. Pedro gets to join a club that's going places, where he'll be valued and appreciated. Newcastle get a player who can take our attack to the next level. And us fans, we get to watch one of the most exciting young talents in the Premier League, wearing our colours week in, week out. This is the kind of signing that announces your intentions to the world. It says, Newcastle United aren't just happy to be in this Champions League, we want to compete at the highest level. Pedro's exactly the calibre of player who can help us do that. Well, that's all from St. James's Park for today, lads and lasses. I'm absolutely buzzing about the possibility of Pedro joining our beloved Newcastle United. The pieces are all there. For this to happen, we just need to make sure we're the ones who act fastest and show him why Newcastle United is the best team in the world. Keep supporting the Magpies, and I'll be back with more updates soon. Away the lads! Lads!